one's for you, Adrian.
Precious Lord,
take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, oh, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
when my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When the days of my life have come and gone,
Come and gone.
at the river I stand. Guide my feet, Lord, hold my hand. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak, oh, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
When the shadows appear and the night grows near, and the days of my life have come and gone,
Come and gone.
hear my cry, hear my call. Hold my hand, Lord, lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am weak, oh, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home.
My God controls the wind and weather. He brings the sunshine and the rain. He holds this universe together with His love. He rules and reigns. He understands your every heartache. He even knows the pain you bear, and He never gets too busy to give an answer to your praise.
My God can do anything, anything, anything. My God can do anything. Yes, He can. He made this earth and all its fullness, and all the time shall bring. My God can do anything. the mighty God has done it all. My God can do anything, anything, anything. My God can do anything. Yes, He can. He made this earth and all its fullness, and all the time shall bring. My God can do anything. My God can do anything.
Okay, good. As you take your seats, get yourselves served for the communion. We are going to go to communion first tonight. I do want to say greetings to everybody that's out there. Hello, that's everyone that's in here and everyone that's online out there. Greetings from the children of the Free Church Ministry. I'm the teaching pastor. My name is Charles Garcia. My nickname is Buddy Garcia. Giving everybody time to get served in here and served at home. It will not be a long communion. It's going to be a rifle shot communion. There are two elements here. There's bread and wine, or as we use here, crackers and wine. Bless the elements before they're given. Allow everybody, let's we're looking around, making sure everybody is served before we get started. When I said we're going to do things differently is because this time, instead of teaching, we've been taught it enough. We're going to be doing it as a direct prayer to God as we do this. We have the two elements. We have the wine. Lord, this is your blood which was shed for us to pay the price to cover us for forgiveness of sins, past, present, and future, to take the wrath of God on yourself so that we don't have to. We know that we don't deserve it. We can't earn it. It's a gift of your grace. And we thank you for your grace now, and take the wine in Jesus' name. You took this bread and you broke it with your precious hands, saying, take and eat. This is my body which is broken for you. That meant you were going to take, as the sins, all sicknesses, all of them, past, present, and future, on your own body, so that we don't have to suffer them. The sicknesses we have now, the sicknesses we haven't gotten yet, you already paid the price for them yourself. Icing on the cake, didn't have to do this. This is the kind of guy you are. We recognize that now and saying to you that with your stripes I was healed, in Jesus' name. Everybody can get seated. We're going to do something else a little bit different tonight. We're experimenting around with some different ways of either getting handouts to you or showing them on the screen that you can look at. That's what we're going to do tonight. We just have one picture we're going to look at. Now, the reason I chose this one, and you could put it up anytime, is this picture shows better than any the massiveness of the structure that we're talking about with this Great Pyramid in Egypt. So as you can see with this one, which is proportionate, that it's just like a big, huge, solid block of stone, and you see these little teensy passages in there. One going down is quite clear, then there's one going up, and then it widens up really big, and then it goes into the king's chamber. The beginning of it goes straight across to what's called the queen's chamber. But I just wanted you to be able to appreciate the massiveness of it, and you can come back to me in a time to time. You may pop in on that again. That's to review. We need to review because just like with the teaching on the lost tribes, remember how you became more and more familiar with things as we went along and as we were talking about things. When we're done tonight, I'm going to read the passage from Isaiah. It's going to sound quite a bit more clear tonight than it did, 3 or 4 weeks ago. But to review, the building, this structure is made up of, and I always say 2.3 million. You may not be able to appreciate how many that is unless I say 2,300,000. That's how many blocks are there. 2,300,000. And counting the Tura limestone covering stones, casing stones that were on the outside of the pyramid, there was 144,000 of those. Feature that. Casing stones. Now all these, the casing stones and the underlying stones, were all cut and placed with optical precision, located in the center of the world's landmass, which is the Giza Plateau. It's a flat-topped subterranean mountain, or I should say flattened top, because it was flattened. Subterranean mountain. It's facing true north, not magnetic north, true north. We'll get more to its precision in just a second, because you just remember that 1 to 50th of an inch tolerance it was in those blocks. The size of massiveness, it covers 13 acres. Try and picture that in your mind. In 13 acres, it doesn't vary more than half an inch. So if you think that 1/50th of an inch is precise in the building blocks, which it is, it doesn't come close to 1/2 inch in 13 acres. 13 acre surface, and doesn't vary anywhere on that more than half an inch. With sockets cut into us to stabilize the pyramid. There's 90 million cubic feet of masonry in this structure, enough to build 30 Empire State Buildings. If it was finished with the capstone on it, it would be a 48-story skyscraper. You don't often think of things that tall out in the desert, and it loses its size just because it's out in the desert. But 48 stories tall. Built anywhere from 4,000 to 25,000 plus years ago. They would have you believe by men that were still in the Stone Age at that time, by Stone Age men doing this precision. 13 acres, half an inch. 35 square feet, 1/50th of an inch tolerances. Now the measurements of this Great Pyramid are based on what we call the pyramid inch. Sometimes they call it the sacred inch. And that's derived from a measurement that goes straight through the axis of the Earth from the South Pole to the North Pole. You divide that into 1/500 million, and that's the pyramid inch. It's 1/500 millionth of the distance of that polar axis. So it's pretty precise. It's much more precise and accurate than what they tried to impose on us a few years back. I don't know how many years ago they tried to change us to the metric system. That's called, oddly enough, the profane inch. And they derived that measurement from measuring from the North Pole around the circumference of the Earth to the equator. And they take 1/10,000,000th part of that, and that's the profane inch. So I just ask you, what do you think is more precise? Something that's 1/10,000,000th or 1/500 millionth? That would be more precise. You can get really down precise with your measurements. The pyramid inch is used, by the way, and has been used, and it's more accurate in all its applications to anything out there in the universe that's measured if you use that system of measurement, more accurate. Also, 1/25th of what they call the royal cubit or the sacred cubit. I think you probably have heard that measurement before. But this particular one, a pyramid inch is 1/25th, or a cubit is 25 pyramid inches. And there are only 4 structures in the world that have been built based on the sacred cubit. Noah's Ark, the Ark of the Covenant, Solomon's Temple, and the Great Pyramid in Egypt. Remember Al-Mamun? You guys remember Al-Mamun? He came to open the pyramid in 820 AD. They thought for the first time. Most of the casing stones, I didn't tell you this before, I told you the Arabs took them off, but most of the casing stones were still on the pyramid when he was there. The majority of the casing stones were taken off in the 600s, AD rather. He brutally tunneled into the center on the north side of the pyramid, and the reason I'm saying that is because if you didn't hear the teaching, you ought to hear it and listen to it, repeat it, listen to the archives. But the method that they used for digging into the pyramid is they would superheat rocks with fire, so they got as hot as they could get them, and they would throw vinegar on the rocks, and it would cause somewhat of an explosion when they did that, and the stone would come into pieces, and they used battering rams to do the rest of the work. Well, they battered into this pyramid about 100 feet. When they got in about 100 feet into the pyramid, they heard something fall in the pyramid off to their left. And so they changed routes with their tunneling, decided to tunnel towards whatever it was they heard, which was off towards the left, tunneled and tunneled out and broke into a descending passageway. I think even God's in control. Well, I don't think I did. I know that God's in control, even in the finding of these passageways, because notice how this is happening. And if you remember the picture, how tiny these things are. They just happen to hit. They could have dug forever and come out the other side of the pyramid and not hit the descending passage. You can see that easily. Go ahead and put it up, Brandon. Picture. That descending passageway goes from the opening on the outside of the pyramid down. That's the pyramid thing that they ran into when they turned sideways. Now you can see the size of the pyramid. I mean, it could be off a few degrees and wind up anywhere. But they wound up in the descending passageway. Dark, stale air, bats, and all that stuff I told you about. This descending passageway, and we'll show you some pictures maybe next week, is about 4 feet across. So it's small. And it went down, down, down to the darkness and to the bowels of the pyramid. Well, they went further back up the descending passage. Remember, it's coming down, so they go back up it till they found the actual opening to the pyramid, which is right there, and there's lintel stones that easily open and stuff that's made for it. But they found the actual opening, but this other opening that Al-Mamun made, still the opening that people go through when they go tour the pyramid instead of the actual opening. They found the actual opening, then they turned around, went back down the descending passageway, and they come suddenly on and ascending passageway is a passageway that's going up. And you can see that on the diagram over there. There's a passageway going down. There's a little one going, little teensy one going up. And they discovered that passage. Small also. Both of these are about 4 feet across. What they heard fall was a stone that was placed across that ascending pyramid to cover it or to hide it. So you wouldn't, it's just flat. You didn't know it was there. They came to call this stone that fell the prism stone. And it fell about 4 feet inside the tunnel, and that's what they heard and went after. They discovered this ascending pyramid, passageway, and they went up it a little ways, and it was blocked by a solid granite block that was slid down into the entrance, so it can't fall, it can't come out. Much harder than the limestone the pyramid's built out of. So they tried digging through it, couldn't do it, so they dug around it. And as you know, they got on the other side and they found another block. And they repeated the same operation, dug around it, and then they found a third block on the other side of that. So they found a series of 3 granite plugs is what they're called, blocking your way up the ascending passageway. And as you continue to go up, I'm going to do some description here. As you continue to go up the ascending passageway, it levels off. It comes to a widening of this ascending passage. And right where the widening is, it goes horizontal in towards the pyramid. That is a passageway that goes to the Queen's Chamber. And all of the important Jewish history is in that passageway and that chamber. The opened up passage continues on up, and then it goes horizontal into what's called the King's Chamber. The descending chamber, the first passageway, I keep saying chamber, the descending passageway that they came onto, that they busted into, goes down the pyramid, all the way down to a pit that's underneath the pyramid that is damp and vermin infested. Now inside this solid masonry, almost solid masonry, massive structure, again we're going to list them. There's a descending passageway that goes from the entrance straight at a 26-degree angle. Remember that, 26-degree angle, all the way down to the pit and then to a dead end underneath the pyramid. About a fourth of the way down the descending passageway is the beginning of the ascending passageway. Another 4-foot passage going up. Also at 26 degrees. That's the angle that it's at. Both these are fairly sharp enough angles that you'd have trouble with your footing. And about 2/3 of the way up this ascending passage, you come to it opens into what's called a grand gallery, where instead of bending and stoop over, and then all of a sudden it's way over your head, really tall. And like I said before, the lower part levels off to the Queen's Chamber, upper part levels off to the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber is located on the 50th course of the pyramid. Now, all throughout these passageways and rooms in there, you will find steps. I don't mean stairs, I mean steps. A step here, a step there, big ones, little ones, great and small steps. You find antechambers, which are the chambers before you go into the chambers. And in the King's Chamber, an empty, what they used to think was a sarcophagus, right in the King's Chamber. Later they found out It's not a sarcophagus. It was never a sarcophagus. Came to call it a coffer. Why, I don't know. It's called the coffer. It's in the king's chamber, and guess what? The internal dimensions of this coffer are the exact dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant. Later on in their studies and exploring the pyramid, they discovered what's called a well shaft and a grotto that goes all the way from the subterranean passage underneath the pyramid, winding its way crookedly up to an opening that's called a grotto, and then on up where it comes out on the Grand Gallery. Now, where it comes out in the Grand Gallery, it's done and by design to show that it burst out in the Grand Gallery. So like it exploded out. And we're going to get more into detail about this. We have taught on it before, and even on other subjects we've taught on this before. But that represents Christ's work after he died, where he went and preached to hell, and they took souls with him. And then this is the work when he died, and then he bursts out because of the date up there. You'll find out in a little bit. It's 33.5 years after he was born. It bursts out, and all of a sudden, you can go standing up free instead of stooped over. We'll get more detail on that in a minute. There are also 4 small air shafts in the pyramid. There's 2 that go from the king's chamber to the outside. And there are 2 that go from the queen's chamber, but they end in the pyramid. They don't communicate with the outside world. Now, when you apply a pyramid inch to a year's time ratio on these measurements, on these descending and ascending passageways, here's what happens. You start out with it's going to be called a benchmark. This benchmark was established by great, tedious, scholarly study by some of the authorities who did the original findings in this structure. The benchmark date here that you'll find are by some scored lines, perpendicular scored lines that are in the descending passageway. And that always strikes me as kind of strange, because this thing is built of solid rock, huge blocks built with precision, and then instead of having an arrow or a gold dot or a language where it says that away or whatever, there's just a scored line. There's a little skinny, like somebody cut it with a knife, a scored line there. But that is the starting point. That scored line has been calculated to be by Rutherford, one of the scholars, 2141 BC. By another of the great scholars, 2144 BC. So you see there's just 3 years difference, about the same time. Mostly 2141 is what's used. That's the benchmark. Now, if you remember the precession of the equinoxes we talked about last week, with the North Star is a different North Star every so many years out there in the heavens. And it takes 26,000 years for you to do the full circle out there, with the Earth wobbling and everything moving and orbiting and traveling. It's actually, the precession of the equinoxes is actually 25,826 years. It takes that long to complete it. Every so many years, a different North Star comes into view. So once in 26,000 years, you line up the same, a given position. Got that? Now, in these passageways, if you go, now listen to this carefully, it's going to throw you at first. If you go up the ascending passageway, or if you go down the descending passageway, you're moving forward in time. Okay, we understand that, right? Okay, even though one's going up, one's going down, you're still going forward in time. You go the other opposite ways on these ramps and you're going back in time. You move forward in time or history. If you go into the descending passage from the benchmark, you go back up it 200 inches. You come to the outer surface of the pyramid, the Tura limestones, at 2341 BC. Now, this happens to be the date of the flood. And if you shoot a line or a laser beam off the side of the pyramid at that point into space, it hits right directly on Aquarius. Aquarius means water, and the symbol of Aquarius is the outpouring of water. That's when the flood was. Pouring out of water. Do we think that's a coincidence? And it's also a time that man started over because God destroyed man except for one family at that point in time with the flood. Nothing like the movie Noah. Don't waste your money. If you go back to the benchmark at 2141 BC, at that time, once in 26,000 years, this descending passageway lines up with a star that's out in the heavens. Happens to be in the constellation Draconis or Alpha Draconis. Sometimes people will mistakenly say it's Alpha Draconis, but no, there's the actual star that's shining down that passageway is in that constellation. The actual star is Thuban, which means subtle. And that's the way the devil works. Subtlety. It's quite simply mankind's destiny under the influence of Satan is to go down, down, down to the pit.